We've been seeing a lot of, seems like every week, some kind of tragic event. Of course, as I prayed earlier today, last Sunday at the First Baptist Church in Sutherland Springs. And when things like that happen, of course, it makes us feel like, what can we do in that kind of situation? I mean, that's the question that we at the security ministry team, are going to be discussing. What do you do? You feel so unprepared, or can you even prepare for such a thing? But in our society, the flip side of it is, sadly, there are a lot of people who are angry these days. That's the flip side. Why did this happen? Unforgiveness, anger. And a lot of that comes when you don't have security, when you don't have a sense of somewhere or something that you could just anchor your life to. And for many people, that is seen on both ends of this sense of hopelessness or even hopelessness. And this morning we're going to talk about that, especially hopelessness, when it seems like there is no help in sight. Where can you go to? What can you do? There's a phrase that you might be familiar with. It's a phrase that's, God helps those who help themselves. I don't know if you've heard this, or you might have even actually used this phrase, but it's not biblical, okay? This phrase is not biblical. It's not something that you can comb through the Bible and you will not find this as a proverb in the Bible, no matter how much you look for it. However, 1 out of 8 people believe that it's in the Bible, and maybe they go look for it, but they use it as if something that is true. And in reality, where you'll find it goes back to the 18th century in a document that Benjamin Franklin wrote, which is in Poor Richard's Almanac. You'll find this phrase, God helps them that help themselves. But again, this is not biblical. It's not true, and we're kind of playing off of this morning. And some of you might say, well, Pastor Ichibe, shouldn't we get off our butts and do something? Shouldn't we do work? Shouldn't we work and expect and do things while we're relying on God for provision? Shouldn't we do that? And those are questions that you ask. But the basic thing is, where does all of that opportunities and work and everything that is the means for your provision, where does that actually come from? Does it come from our efforts? Does it come from our ability to provide for ourselves? Or ultimately, where does it come from? Where does it come in? We believe that it comes from God. And so, in reality, the scripture might teach something altogether different. That God helps those who can't help themselves. Psalm 72, 12-13 says, "For he will deliver the needy when he cries for help, the afflicted also, and him who has no helper. He will have compassion on the poor and needy, and the lives of the needy he will save." Isaiah 25:4 says, "For you have been a defense for the helpless, a defense for the needy in his distress, a refuge from the storm, a shade from the heat, for the breath of the ruthless is like a rainstorm against the wall." And there are a lot of people out there who would like to see these needy or do things to actually exploit the needy things. But God, on his part, he is a defense for the helpless, and he cares for the needy. And that's what we see as we look at the life of Ruth and Naomi. And today we're going to look at the 2nd chapter of the book of Ruth. But as we begin to think about this, how does God provide for people like Ruth and Naomi, who were indeed helpless and needy? How does God help us when we feel helpless and needy? And the first thing that we're going to realize is that God provides opportunities for us to have our needs met. That the very means by which our needs might be met, that the opportunities themselves, the possibilities themselves are what God has provided for us. And we see that in the life of Ruth and Naomi. If you remember, and Pastor Yama alluded to it, Ruth and Naomi, they left Moab now at this point. That's at the end of chapter 1. We see that they left Moab, that they made a decision to go back to Bethlehem, which is where Naomi was originally from. She came with her husband Elimelech. She left Bethlehem with her husband Elimelech and her 2 sons to go to Moab in the midst of a time of famine, it says, in the time of the judges, it says, a time when the people of Israel were not living in obedience, were not walking by faith. And as a direct kind of judgment against them, they were going through very hard time in their land. And because of that famine, this particular family decided they need to figure out, how they're going to help themselves, okay? Decide that, going to Moab is a good idea. So they leave their hometown and they left. But now, Naomi, now that her husband has died, now the 2 sons have died, and now she hears news that there are better times now in Bethlehem. Take that to say the people of Israel have turned back to God. And God had responded to their cry and has brought about deliverance, has brought about some times of prosperity. And so Naomi and Ruth have now returned back to Bethlehem. But the reality is they are 2 widows. They are 2 people who practically do not have any really sense of a future in that society, because it is very difficult for them to get a job. For Ruth, as was alluded to, being a foreigner, her prospects were very, very slim. So it is in that context that we begin the first verse in chapter 2. And there's this sense of, okay, well, where is their help going to come from? And this verse is kind of like a teaser, because it mentions kind of this guy who could possibly be there to help these 2 ladies. It begins with, now Naomi had a kinsman of her husband, a man of great wealth of the family of Elimelech, whose name was Boaz. So here's this introduction as the end of the chapter 1 ends with this sense of a hope to come, which talks about they arrive at the time or the beginning of the barley harvest. That's good news. Here, there's again another answer to, well, where are they going to get some help? And there's this answer where it says, well, Naomi, they throw it in there, well, Naomi had a kinsman of her husband, a man of great wealth, well, that's helpful, of the family of Elimelech, whose name was Boaz. But it's interesting, it introduces that, and then we come back to that in a little bit. So there's the opportunity, potential that is provided for Ruth and Naomi, and it's provided by God, and we'll see that as we read through the passage. But this is the situation here. And but remember again, the situation is not a good one for them. The possibility of finding a job is very, very difficult. Again, 2 widows, primarily in that society, it's the man who earns and provides a living. And here are 2 women, and one is probably up there in her age, right, as a widow, Naomi. And here we have Ruth, who is a foreigner, coming into a place where they don't know, where she doesn't know anyone, and people might be suspicious of her. So a very difficult situation. But here again, God provides different opportunities. In today's society, people who are in need and like that, and if you're under the protection of a government, we have in this country something called welfare, right? We have a welfare system. Well, in that society, they didn't have that. But they did do, by God's commandments, a thing called gleaning. And this is an opportunity specifically for widows and foreigners to actually go out into these fields during harvest time to have a work with their hands to provide for their needs. And God commands specifically that these farmers were to leave part of their, the harvest for these people to pick that, and so that they could be provided for. This is God's kindness. This is God's provision for those who are in need. And Leviticus 19 talks about this, something called the gleaning. Now, when you reap the harvest of your land, this is speaking to the farmers, the owners of these fields, you shall not reap to the very corners of your field. In other words, don't just get everything. Leave some. Nor shall you gather the gleanings of your harvest. So some things have fallen. Leave it alone. Nor shall you glean your vineyard, nor shall you gather the fallen fruit of your vineyard. You shall leave them for the needy, specifically, and for the stranger, foreigner. I am the Lord your God. So here's an opportunity that's given. And you know who fits the bill here, right? Who? Ruth. She's needy, and she's a foreigner. When we see needy, some of the most needy people in that society were indeed widows. And again, here's a situation where Ruth fits all of those things. So this is an opportunity that is before her. And so God provides opportunities for us to have our needs met. In our society, I don't know how that opportunity might come. Perhaps for the homeless, it is through the soup kitchens that are provided, or through a homeless shelter. Or for others, their needs might be met through a church like this that has a food or clothing pantry, or a church may give out gift cards, or maybe they might even provide some vocational training or help in some other way. Or for some people, and I think this might be closer to a modern day gleaning, but it might be going out there collecting the aluminum cans and plastic bottles, and sometimes you see these people, right, with carts filled and bags filled and things, and but to collect those things, and then to sell it at a recycle center for some cash to meet their needs. So different opportunities that are provided, and it's often provided through God's people, those who love God. That God provides opportunities for us to have our needs met. And so we see that Ruth goes out and she decides that that's what she's going to do. She's going to go gleaning, and she talks to her Naomi. And Ruth the Moabitess said to Naomi, "Please let me go to the field and glean among the ears of grain after one in whose sight I may find favor." And she said to her, "Go, my daughter." So Ruth now goes out, and where do you think she's going to go? If you're tracking with the story, you're like, she's probably going to go to Boaz's field. And the Bible answers that very clearly. The next verse says, "So she departed and went and gleaned in the field after the reapers, and she happened to come to the portion of the field belonging to Boaz, who was of the family of Elimelech." Now, the author here, when he says happened, it doesn't mean like she just by chance came to this field. The idea here is that of all the places that she could have gone to, where did she go? She went to Boaz's field. Why do you think that is? Because God directed her there. That's the sense that we get. And it is God's provision in providing this opportunity for Ruth to glean in this place, Boaz's field. And so now we see that now Ruth has gone to this field, and she's beginning to work, but she got there early before even Boaz came to the field. And she's been reaping, and she's not reaping, but she's been gleaning on the field there and working hard. And now Boaz comes, and Boaz, we see the character of Boaz and how much he loved God and how kind he is as an employer, because these people who worked here were hired out for this harvesting time, and we see how he addresses them. He comes and he says to the reapers or his employees, "May the Lord be with you." He says, "May God's presence be with you. May God be with you." And these people answer back respectfully and with affection, "May the Lord bless you." Then Boaz said to his servant, who was in charge of the reapers, "Whose young woman is this?" Boaz, who was interested and had charge over his field, knew everybody who worked there, but there was someone new there that day that he noticed. And so he asked, whose young woman is this? And what we see here is that the person who is in charge, the foreman, begins to explain to Boaz that this person is Ruth, and that she has been working there diligently from early on, and that basically she has not really rested much. But also he talks about her humility and how she came and asked politely if it was okay to glean in their field. And we see that here in the next verses. The servant in charge of the reapers replied, she is the young Moabite woman who returned with Naomi from the land of Moab. And she said, please let me glean and gather after the reapers among the sheaves. Thus she came and has remained from the morning until now. She has been sitting in the house for a little while. That ending part, the way it sounds, is kind of hard to say, but it basically means she's only rested there for a few minutes or a few seconds. That's kind of the text that's there. Basically, she's been working diligently with very little time of rest. That's the essence that's there. So we hear this glowing review of Ruth by a person that has met her for the first time. She's a foreigner, it says, so they might have had a certain view towards foreigners or towards widow. But this glowing review of Ruth is given to Boaz. And now we see, well, how does God provide? God provides also not just opportunities, but God provides for us in unexpected ways. And we see that here in the dealings with Boaz. So Boaz now, hearing this, goes to Ruth, and he basically encourages her. He really wants her to know that she's welcome there, and that he wants to make sure she's treated well. That's the way that Boaz approaches Ruth. So here's Boaz. Boaz says to Ruth, listen carefully, my daughter. Look at that familial way that he's approaching her. Do not go to glean in another field. Furthermore, do not go on from this one, but stay here with my maids. Let your eyes be on the field which they reap, and go after them. Indeed, I have commanded the servants not to touch you. When you are thirsty, go to the water jars and drink from the water what the servants draw. What Boaz provided for Ruth here was both protection from the people or the surrounding, and also protection from the elements. That she said, told his servants not to touch her. The other translation says, don't molest her. That's the terminology. Basically, don't cause trouble. Don't do anything to harm her. That's the sense that we get here. So here, Boaz is providing protection for Ruth from these people, and also he is providing protection from the elements, the heat. As she gets thirsty, that she would get to have some water. And that's a wonderful provision that is given here, so that she does not get dehydrated. But these are unexpected things. These are not common practices. Boaz was a kind man, and God directed her to this kind person, and she was treated kindly. But it was uncommon kindness that she received. It was unexpected. And so because of this, Ruth, the realizing or just wondering, why is this person being so nice to me? Do you sometimes wonder that? Why is this person being so nice to me? I haven't done anything. Have you found favor with someone before? Maybe in your workplace, someone recognized what you were doing. It might have not been extraordinary, but they recognized your diligence and your faithfulness or your kindness or whatever character. And they expressed that to you. Or maybe you found that in school. You were diligent in your schoolwork and your teacher pointed that out and gave you favor. Or maybe it's just in the general public, someone comes up to you and says, I noticed your smile, I noticed this, or, but favor by other people. There was a time when, I don't know why, we went to a restaurant and we got a free meal. And they claimed it was like, we were a little bit late on whatever, but it's like, we didn't ask for it. So I don't know what that was, finding favor, I guess, but by God. But unexpected things happen. And so Ruth recognizes that she falls on her face, bowing to the ground, and says to Boaz, why have I found favor in your sight, that you should take notice of me? since I am a foreigner. See, Ruth understood her place. She was not this lady of entitlement that she deserved everything or whatever. But she understood her place. She was a foreigner in this land. Although she had committed herself to believe in the God of Israel, in the eyes of the people, because that's how it is, right? People don't look into the hearts, or they're so caught up with the outward appearances of people. Oh, that person's a Jew. Oh, that person's a Samaritan. Oh, that person's a whatever. And that's as far as people will look at sometimes. And we got to be careful because sometimes we do that too. But that's what she came. She understood that she had no place of merit or honor in this society. And in the position that she was, which was a gleaner by just definition, was she was needy, she was a foreigner, she was, in a sense, the bottom rung of the socio-economic chain. And yet this man shows uncommon, unexpected favor. And here's Boaz's reply. Basically, Boaz says that, I've noticed, I've taken note of your kindness, your devotion that you have shown to your mother-in-law, Naomi. And also that you have come here. You have come here with faith in the God of Israel. And for that, I commend you and I bless you. And this is how he put it. He says, Boaz replied to her, all that you have done for your mother-in-law after the death of your husband has been fully reported to me, and how you left your father and your mother in the land of your birth and came to a people that you did not previously know. May the Lord reward your work and your wages be full from the Lord, the God of Israel, under whose wings you have come to seek refuge. That beautiful imagery of coming under the care and protection of a mother hen or any kind of a bird. And you're under that refuge. And may you be rewarded for your work, your faith and trust in the God of Israel. That's the words that he gives. Ruth, now understanding it, what's going on, expresses her joy, expresses her delight and appreciation to Boaz. Then she said, I have found favor in your sight, my Lord, for you have comforted me, and indeed have spoken kindly to your maidservant, though I am not like one of your maidservants. She understands she is not a hired hand. She is someone off the street, so to speak, who is here, and he has been kind to her. God provides for us in unexpected ways. And then it goes on even further. Boaz, not only, he goes on and says, at mealtime Boaz said to her, come here that you may eat of the bread and dip your piece of bread in the vinegar. So she sat beside the reapers, and he served her roasted grain, and she ate and was satisfied, and had some left. Boaz said, come and eat with us like you're part of the family, like you're part of the company employees. Come here, come to the company cafeteria, all right, and enjoy a meal with us. And then it says, when she rose to glean, Boaz commanded his servants, saying, let her glean even among the sheaves, and do not insult her. Also you shall purposely pull out for her some grain from the bundles, and leave it, that she may glean, and do not rebuke her. These are things that were unknown to Ruth. He's bringing aside his other workers, saying, let her get as much as she wants, and leave some for her so that the work is easy for her to glean. That's basically what he's saying. And don't be mean to her. So he shows uncommon, an unexpected favor to her. And we see how God provides generously to meet our needs as she provided for Ruth and Naomi. So she gleaned in the field until evening. Then she beat out what she had gleaned, and it was about an ephah of barley. You know how much that is? Apparently it's about 3/5 of a bushel of barley. And to put that into wages, that's a little less than half a month's wages. So she did about a half a month's wages in one day as a gleaner. One, she was working hard, but two, they were giving her a lot to glean. That's amazing. That's amazing generosity. And she took it up and went into the city, and her mother-in-law saw what she had gleaned. In other words, she noticed. It was noticeable. Like, she was expecting something like this, and she's like, wow. She came back with a lot. That's a lot of gleaning there. And her mother-in-law saw what she had gleaned. She also took it out and gave Naomi what she had left after she was satisfied. So her obento, right, leftover lunch, she gave that to Naomi as well, and they were blessed. Her mother-in-law then said to her, "Where did you glean today, and where did you work? May he who took notice of you be blessed." She's saying, wow, this is incredible. Whoever you work for, they were being really kind and generous to you. That man needs to be blessed. So she told her, that is, Ruth told Naomi with whom she had worked, and said, "The name of the man with whom I work today is Boaz." And here again, we come back to this. And Naomi said to her daughter-in-law, "May he be blessed of the Lord, who has not withdrawn his kindness to the living and to the dead." Meaning that, as a family member, and we'll get into this more next week, but this family kindness that he expressed, that by blessing them in many ways, he were blessing the family members who have already deceased as well. That's what it says. Again, Naomi said to her, "The man is our relative. He is one of our closest relatives." Then Ruth the Moabitess said, "Furthermore, he said to me, you should stay close to my servants until they have finished all my harvest." So basically he said, "Come back tomorrow, keep coming back." Naomi said to Ruth, her daughter-in-law, "It is good, my daughter, that you go out with his maids, so that others do not fall upon you in another field." Again, you will be protected there. That's good. That's wonderful. So she stayed close by the maids of Boaz in order to glean until the end of the barley harvest and the wheat harvest, and she lived with her mother-in-law. So we see how generously God had provided for Ruth and Naomi. And God also generously provides for us. But at the end of this verse, we're left with this tension, because it's like, okay, she's been gleaning, and as long as there's a harvest, she could glean. But it says here, until the end of the barley harvest and the wheat harvest. Oh yeah, what happens to them after the harvest? How are they going to be provided then? And that's a question that we might ask ourselves as well sometimes. Maybe you're about to graduate, and maybe you're wondering, if when I graduate, will I be able to find a job? Will I be able to make enough to eat and pay for a place to live? Or maybe some of you are facing retirement, and maybe you're asking those same questions that a graduate has. Am I going to have enough to live? Or for some, maybe you just moved here to San Diego, and I don't know what your job situation, or maybe you don't have any acquaintances, you don't know anybody. How am I going to work? How am I going to provide? Am I going to be provided for? How am I going to live? Those are questions that we might ask. And for all of those things, we come back to that God provides generously to meet our needs. And the key verse in here is what Ruth 2:12 says, "May the Lord reward your work and your wages be full from the Lord, the God of Israel, under whose wings you have come to seek refuge." And that's the question for us. Have we come to seek refuge in the Lord? Because ultimately God does, and he helps us in our time of need as we humbly seek him and put our trust in him. Getting back to what we started off with, God helps those who cannot help themselves. And the greatest place where we see that is in our salvation. I'll end with this. Romans 5:6-8, it says, "For while we were still helpless," it says. While we were still helpless. Some of you might think I got it all together, but no, Scripture makes it very clear when we stand before God. Another way where it puts it is that we are spiritually bankrupt. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of God. When we really recognize it. For while we were still helpless, at the right time Christ died for the ungodly. For one will hardly die for a righteous man, though perhaps for the good man someone would dare even to die. But God demonstrates his own love toward us in that while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. There is the provision for the greatest need that all of us have. And as far as this is concerned, we are all needy and helpless. God has provided the opportunity for us to have salvation in the sending of his Son, Jesus Christ. And it is unexpected. It is unexpected for someone who is so righteous and so good to die for someone so unworthy as myself. And the generosity in which that this has come, if you think about it, Christ left heaven to come as a humble man and die for us, so that in turn through him, we might leave this world to join him in the abundance of eternity in heaven. What a generous provision that God has offered to us. Our help comes from God, and he provides for us abundantly. And therefore, we should humbly seek him and put our trust in him. And when we come under his shelter, under his wings, we know that we are provided for and we are protected, even as God provided for Ruth and Naomi. Let's pray. Our gracious Heavenly Father, we are so grateful for your love for us. Sometimes we think we have it all together, Lord, but the reality is that in my life, I find that I find myself desperately in need of you. Even in the song that we sang earlier, moment by moment, Lord, we so desperately need you. Father, what you desire of us is the humility to recognize our need for you and to seek your refuge, to continue to trust in you. Father, because you are a loving God, you are a caring God, you are a kind God, you are a generous God. And Scripture, other Scripture reminds us that, Father, you already know our needs even before we ask. So, Father, help us to continue to walk with you and to just enjoy you and what you provide for us. We thank you, Lord. We pray these things in Jesus' name.